trusted my boss with my career until I realized he was using me for far more than just work. What I uncovered nearly destroyed me, but it also gave me the chance for the sweetest revenge. When I got the offer letter, I cried. Not the quiet, delicate kind of tears you see in movies, but the messy, heart-bursting kind that only come when your dreams finally start to look real. It had taken me years of hard work, sleepless nights, rejections, and disappointments to get here. This company wasn't just another workplace. It was the place, a corporate empire with a reputation for cutting-edge projects, international clients, and the kind of prestige that could define a career. For me, it was more than a job. It was my shot at a future I'd only dared to imagine. Walking into the building for the first time felt surreal. The lobby was all glass and marble, sleek lines and soft lighting. Everyone seemed to walk with purpose, dressed to perfection, their eyes sharp with ambition. I clutched my new ID badge in my hand, almost afraid it would vanish if I let go. That's when I saw him, Alex Mera, my new boss. He was standing at the center of it all, effortlessly commanding the room. Tall, sharp features, a perfectly tailored suit. But it wasn't just his looks, it was his presence. People leaned toward him when he spoke, laughed a little too hard at his jokes, and hung on to his every word. He had the kind of charisma that made you feel like the world slowed down when his eyes landed on you. When he walked over to greet me, my heart skipped. He knows my name? "Welcome aboard, Victoria," he said, his voice smooth, professional, yet warm enough to make me feel seen. "We've been expecting you. I've heard great things about your work." My cheeks flushed. He was my boss. This was strictly professional, and yet that small moment felt electric, like I had just been noticed by someone who mattered in ways I didn't yet understand. The first weeks were a blur of meetings, presentations, and learning curves. I threw myself into the work, determined to prove I belonged here. Alex was everything a new hire could ask for in a leader. Attentive, articulate, inspiring. He challenged me, but also encouraged me, making sure I had space to shine. But there were little things, too. The way he'd linger a moment longer when he asked how I was adjusting. The way his compliments carried a subtle undertone that felt personal. It was never inappropriate, never blatant, just enough to leave me wondering. One evening, as I was wrapping up late, he passed by my desk. "Still here?" he asked, smiling. I laughed nervously. Trying to impress the boss. He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice. "You don't need to try. You already have." I froze, not sure how to respond. Was that a line? Or just encouragement? The way his eyes held mine told me it was more than casual. But before I could overthink, he straightened up, wished me good night, and walked away, leaving me with my heart racing. That night, lying in bed, I replayed the moment over and over. Part of me scolded myself. He's your boss. Keep it professional. But another part, the part I couldn't silence, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something bigger. At that point, I didn't know the price of being noticed by Alex Mera. I didn't know that the very thing I was celebrating, my dream job, would soon become the stage for the most dangerous game of love, power, and betrayal I had ever played. And once the game began, there would be no turning back. In every career, there's someone who opens the right door at the right time. Someone who makes you feel like your potential is limitless. For me, that person was Alex Mera. Or at least, that's who I believed he was. It started innocently. He made time for me, more than a boss usually would for a new hire. While other managers seemed distant or intimidating, Alex carried this charm that made you feel comfortable, even when you were under pressure. He had this signature smile. Not a wide grin, not forced, but soft and knowing. A smile that said, "I see you. You're special." Every time he gave me that smile, my heart betrayed me with a little flutter. One morning during a team meeting, I was fumbling through a presentation slide. My voice trembled, and I could feel my confidence slipping. Before the silence became unbearable, Alex jumped in, smoothing over my error with a graceful explanation. Then he turned back to me with that smile. "Don't worry, Victoria. You're still new, but I can see you're a quick learner." The rest of the room nodded along, and just like that, the humiliation I felt seconds ago melted into pride. He hadn't just saved me, he had protected me. That was the beginning of my dangerous gratitude. Over the next few weeks, he became my guide. He'd call me into his office after hours, not to scold, but to explain, to show me how the company really worked. He talked about strategies, clients, and career paths, but he also shared glimpses of his life. He told me about his struggles as a young manager, how he built his reputation, how lonely it could be at the top. It was strange. In those moments, he stopped feeling like just a boss. He felt human, relatable, almost vulnerable. And in his vulnerability, I found myself letting down my own guard. I still remember one late evening when we were the only two left in the office. The city skyline glittered through the glass walls as he leaned back in his chair, loosening his tie. "You remind me of myself," he said, studying me with those sharp, unreadable eyes, ambitious, hungry, ready to take risks. "You'll go far, Victoria." I should have just smiled and thanked him, but instead, my voice came out softer, almost a whisper, not without someone to guide me. His eyes lingered on mine, longer than they should have. And then came that smile again, the mentor's smile, the one that disarmed me every time. But this time there was something else behind it, something heavier, something that made the air between us feel charged. I walked out of his office that night with shaky hands, replaying every word, every glance. Was I imagining it, or was there something more in the way he looked at me? It wasn't love, not yet. It wasn't even romance. It was something far more dangerous, the start of a connection blurred by power, desire, and the illusion of trust. Looking back now, I realized the mentor's smile was never just about encouragement. It was a mask, a tool, a way to make me feel safe, while he slowly drew me into his world, and I walked into it willingly, unaware that each step closer to him was also a step closer to betrayal. Every workplace has its boundaries, written ones, like rules, policies, codes of conduct, and unwritten ones, the invisible lines you just know you shouldn't cross. With Alex, I could feel that line hovering between us, fragile and dangerous. The problem was neither of us seemed ready to step back. It began with small things, late-night emails with a touch of warmth in his words. Good work today, Victoria. You remind me why I love mentoring young talent. Or a text sent just past midnight. Are you still awake? Just thought of an idea for the project, wanted to run it by you. I'd smile at my phone like a teenager, crafting careful replies, wondering if I was reading too much into it. Maybe he was just being a supportive boss. Maybe. Then came the coffees. At first, it was him inviting me for a quick break to discuss a presentation. Then, let's grab lunch outside. The cafeteria is too noisy. Slowly, these work outings began to feel less like professional check-ins and more like secret rituals we shared. The turning point came on a Friday evening. The office was unusually quiet. Most people had left early. I was at my desk finishing up a report when I felt a presence behind me. You work too hard, Alex said, his voice lower than usual. I laughed lightly. Or maybe I'm just trying to prove myself. He leaned over my desk close enough that I caught the faint scent of his cologne. You've already proven yourself. At least to me, I froze. His words were innocent enough, but the way he said them, it was as though he'd just crossed that invisible line, daring me to notice. That night, he offered me a ride home. I hesitated for half a second before saying yes. The drive was quiet at first, filled with the hum of the city outside. Then he asked, Do your parents live nearby? I shook my head. No, just me here. They're back in Delhi. So you're alone? His tone carried an unspoken curiosity. Yes, I answered, feeling my pulse quicken. We reached my apartment and I unbuckled my seatbelt, my fingers trembling slightly. Thank you for the ride, I murmured. He looked at me then, his gaze lingering longer than it should have. His lips parted as though he wanted to say something, but instead, he smiled that same disarming smile, the one that blurred lines and pulled me in deeper. Good night, Victoria, he said softly. I climbed out of the car, but as I walked up to my building, I could feel his eyes on me, watching, waiting. That night, I lay awake, replaying every moment, the way he leaned closer, the way his voice softened, the way his silence spoke louder than words. There was an unspoken line between us, yes, but I realized something terrifying. I no longer wanted to stay on the safe side of it. I wanted to see what happened if I crossed it, and soon we both would. The first time it happened, it felt like stepping off a cliff. There was fear, yes, but also a thrill that made my heart pound louder than reason. It was a Tuesday night. The office had emptied out hours ago, and I was still polishing a presentation Alex had asked me to refine. I was exhausted but determined. When he walked into the room, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, I felt that familiar rush of adrenaline. You're still here? He asked, leaning casually against the doorway. I smiled faintly. Just wanted it to be perfect for tomorrow. He walked over, standing behind me as I scrolled through the slides. His hand brushed mine on the mouse. It could have been an accident. But when neither of us moved away, the silence between us grew charged. Victoria, he said softly, my name sounding different in his mouth, less professional, more intimate. I turned and our eyes locked. That was it. That unspoken line we'd been dancing around for weeks. In that moment, it shattered. His lips were on mine before I could even think, and all the walls I'd built around myself crumbled in an instant. What followed was reckless, desperate, and undeniable. For weeks, we lived two lives, the polished professional mask we wore in daylight and the secret we indulged in after hours. In the office, he was my boss, sharp and commanding. Outside, he was mine, whispering promises and stealing moments like a man addicted. We met in quiet cafes on the far side of the city, where no one knew us. We lingered too long in the shadows of his office, my heart racing every time footsteps echoed down the hall. He called me late at night, his voice low, confessions spilling out in the darkness. You make me feel alive again, Victoria, he whispered once, like I've been asleep for years and only just woken up. I wanted to believe him, and I did. But with every secret smile, every stolen kiss, guilt gnawed at me, because there was something I couldn't ignore, no matter how much I tried to bury it. Alex was married. The first time I saw the ring, I told myself it was just for appearances. Maybe his marriage was over. Maybe he was unhappy. He never mentioned his wife, and I never asked. It was easier to live in denial, to let the fantasy consume me. But then came the cracks. A colleague casually mentioning that Mrs. Mehra had attended a company gala last year, a framed photo I glimpsed on his desk one evening when he thought I wasn't looking, and the worst, a phone call that lit up his screen with her name, his face tightening as he quickly declined it. The affair had started as a secret escape, but now it was becoming a prison. Every time he touched me, I wondered, did those same hands hold her too? Every time he whispered my name, I wondered if his wife ever heard the same tone. And yet I couldn't walk away, because along with guilt, there was ambition. Alex wasn't just my lover. He was my ladder, the man who could shape my career, open doors I could never reach alone. And whether I admitted it or not, part of me clung to him not just for love, but for what being with him meant. The affair was hidden. The affair was dangerous. The affair was wrong, but it was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. If secrecy was a game, then the office was the most dangerous board we played on. For a while, Alex and I convinced ourselves we were careful. The stolen glances were brief, the texts deleted, the meetings disguised as project discussions. But nothing stays hidden forever. Not when human hearts are involved. It began with little things I brushed off as paranoia. The way my colleague Mina raised an eyebrow whenever Alex lingered too long by my desk. The smirk on Daniel's face when he caught me leaving the boss's office late at night. Even the receptionist's sing-song tone when she'd say, Mr. Shh. Mehra asked if you could step in for a minute. They didn't know anything. Not yet. But they suspected. And in an office where gossip spread faster than emails, suspicion was poison. One afternoon, I overheard two junior associates whispering in the break room. Have you noticed how much time Victoria spends with him? One said. Please. The other laughed. It's obvious. That promotion she's gunning for? She doesn't need luck. She's already got the boss wrapped around her finger. The words stung, not because they were entirely false, but because they reduced everything I'd worked for, my late nights, my effort, my skills, into one ugly rumor. She's sleeping her way to the top. I wanted to scream at them, to defend myself, to shout that I had earned my place. But I stayed silent, pressing my nails into my palm until the sting grounded me, because denial would only feed the flames. Meanwhile, Alex seemed unbothered. If anything, he looked energized, more daring. He'd brush my arm lightly during meetings, stand too close in hallways, let his eyes linger on me even when others were around. "Alex," I hissed one day, after he'd given me that smile across a crowded conference room. "People are starting to talk." "Let them," he said smoothly, leaning against his desk. "They don't know the truth. And even if they guess, what does it matter?" "It matters to me," I shot back, my voice trembling. "I've worked too hard to be reduced to this." For the first time, he looked irritated. "Victoria, you think too much. You're talented. Everyone knows that. This promotion, it's yours, with or without me." But his words didn't soothe me. Instead, they made me wonder, if I really deserved it on my own, why did it feel like I needed him so badly to get there? The whispers grew louder in my head, even when no one was speaking. Every laugh in the hallway, every glance exchanged between colleagues felt like it was about me. Paranoia became my shadow. And then came the moment that shattered any illusion of safety. It was late evening. I was in Alex's office, papers scattered between us when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face paled. "Who is it?" I asked, already fearing the answer. "My wife," he muttered, standing abruptly. Before I could react, he motioned for me to hide behind the door, like some dirty secret. And that's exactly what I was. As he spoke to her in a calm, affectionate tone, I stood there in silence, the realization sinking like ice into my veins. To the office, I was the ambitious young woman who'd caught the boss's eye. To his wife, I was invisible. And to him, I was both everything and nothing at all. When he hung up, he smiled weakly, trying to brush it off. But in that moment, something inside me cracked, because I realized the whispers weren't just about the office anymore. They were the echoes of my own conscience, reminding me of a truth I had tried so hard to bury. I wasn't just risking my career. I was risking myself. At first, I told myself the whispers in the office were just noise, that Alex's wife calling was just a reminder of a marriage that was already dead, that everything we had was stronger than all of that. But lies have a way of catching up with you, even the ones you tell yourself. The cracks began showing slowly, like hairline fractures in glass. Hard to see at first, but once they appeared, I couldn't unsee them. It started with his promises. In the beginning, Alex's words had been intoxicating. "You're the most brilliant person I've ever mentored. You deserve to lead, not follow. That promotion? It's practically yours already." But as weeks passed, those promises shifted. Every time I brought up the promotion, he'd say, "Trust me, it's coming." Or, "These things take time. Don't rush it." Meanwhile, deadlines slipped. Projects that I spearheaded with my sweat and hours were announced under his name in board meetings. I was always the support, the assistant, the silent architect behind his victories. "Why didn't you mention my work on the campaign today?" I asked him once, trying to keep my voice steady. He waved it off, smiling as though it didn't matter. "Oh, don't worry about the credit, Victoria. Everyone knows you're talented. What matters is strategy, keeping our cards close until the promotion is official." Our cards. His strategy. His timing. Always him. I told myself to be patient, but deep inside, a question festered. Was he actually helping me, or was he just keeping me under his control? The nights grew colder, too. The calls that once came every evening began to dwindle. His excuses multiplied. Board meeting ran late. Wife isn't feeling well. Too tired tonight. I wanted to believe him, but my gut whispered otherwise. The passion that once consumed us was being replaced by something else, convenience. He reached for me when he needed comfort, or when ambition lit a fire in him, but I was no longer his constant. And then there were the lies I couldn't ignore. One Friday, we were supposed to meet after work. I waited at the quiet cafe we always went to, sipping on cold coffee long after the ice had melted. He never showed. Hours later, a text arrived. "Sorry, something urgent came up at home. We'll explain tomorrow." The next morning, when I entered the office, I overheard Mina chatting in the hallway. "Did you see Alex at the gala last night? He and his wife looked so perfect together." Perfect. Together. I felt my stomach drop, anger rising like a storm. That was the urgent thing, smiling for photographs with the woman he swore he no longer loved. That evening, when I confronted him, his response was smooth, practiced. "Victoria, you know appearances matter. I can't just abandon her overnight. It would raise questions. These things take time. That was his favorite shield. But how much of it was left for me to give? I stared at him, searching for the man who once made me feel like I could conquer the world. But all I saw was a man who was already conquering it, using me as a pawn in his game. That night, lying in my bed alone, I realized something chilling. The cracks in his promises weren't just about my promotion. They were about us, about me, about the reality I'd been refusing to face. Because maybe, just maybe, I was never part of his future at all. There comes a moment in every secret, every lie, when it can no longer be contained. Mine came on a night I'll never forget. It had been another long day, one of those endless stretches of back-to-back meetings and impossible deadlines. Alex had promised me we'd meet after work to catch up. By then, catch up had become code. For apologies, for explanations, for trying to patch the cracks we both pretended weren't there. I dressed carefully that day, more for him than for anyone else. A soft blouse, the one he once said made my eyes glow, and a touch of perfume he loved. I wanted him to see me, to remember what we had been, not what we were turning into. But when I reached his office, he wasn't there. The lights were off, the desk cleared, the space eerily silent. I checked my phone. No text, no missed call. My chest tightened as panic set in. On instinct, I walked down the corridor toward the private elevator he used. That's when I saw them, Alex and his wife. She was standing close, laughing softly at something he said, her hand brushing his arm the way mine used to. He looked happy, unburdened, like a man who wasn't living two lives at all. And me? I was the ghost in the hallway. I froze, my heart pounding so loud I thought they might hear it. They stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding shut as if sealing my fate. I felt sick, not just because he had lied again, but because I had believed him, because I had let myself believe that I mattered more than I did. The next day I confronted him. You told me you were done with her, I said, my voice shaking. You told me we were building something real. He sighed, rubbing his forehead like a man exhausted by drama. Victoria, you need to understand. My marriage isn't something I can just walk away from overnight. There are responsibilities, appearances. It's complicated. Complicated? I snapped. You kissed me like I was the only one. You whispered that I was your future, and now you hide behind complicated? Do you even hear yourself? His tone turned cold, clipped. Don't raise your voice. This isn't the place, I laughed bitterly. The place? That's all you care about, isn't it? Appearances. Your reputation, not me. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time, I saw the truth in his eyes. Not love, not devotion, but calculation. I wasn't his partner. I was his distraction, his escape, his secret. And worse, I was his fool. That night, I broke. I sat in my apartment, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Mascara streaked down my cheeks, my eyes red and hollow. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. How had I gone from ambitious, confident Victoria, the woman who had fought her way into the corporate world, to this? A shadow, a secret. A woman defined not by her work, but by the man who dangled promises like bait. The breaking point wasn't just about him, it was about me. It was the moment I realized that if I didn't stop, I would lose myself completely. And in that moment of devastation, a new thought sparked. Small, fragile, but alive. Maybe I didn't need him to rise. Maybe I could turn this pain into power. But first I had to face the ugliest truth of all. I had been betrayed, not just by him, but by myself for believing in him. The night I broke down, I thought I had lost everything. My dignity, my career, my sense of self. But in the silence of my apartment, after the tears dried, something unexpected began to bloom inside me. Anger. Not the wild, reckless kind, the sharp, focused kind, the kind that doesn't destroy, it rebuilds. I realized something that night. Alex had underestimated me. He saw me as a beautiful distraction, someone easy to control with pretty words and empty promises. He thought I needed him to rise. He thought he was the key to my future. He was wrong. The next morning, I didn't walk into the office like a wounded lover. I walked in like a woman with a mission. Head high, heels clicking against the marble floor, eyes forward. If people whispered, I let them. Let them talk. I would give them something real to whisper about soon enough. Step one of my plan was simple. Take back control of my work. For months, Alex had taken credit for my ideas, my strategies, my sleepless nights. No more. I started documenting everything. Every proposal, every draft, every email thread. If I so much as suggested a campaign angle, I made sure there was a record of it. Step 2, visibility. Instead of hiding behind him in meetings, I spoke up. I presented my own work with confidence, even if it meant challenging him in front of the team. At first, he brushed it off, trying to smooth over my words with his polished charm. But soon others started noticing. Colleagues who once dismissed me as the boss's favorite began to see the truth. I wasn't just lucky. I was damn good at my job. Step 3, patience. Revenge isn't about striking fast. It's about striking smart. I waited, bided my time, let Alex believe he still had me under his spell. I smiled when he smiled, nodded when he fed me promises, all while gathering proof of his lies, his manipulations, his inappropriate late-night meetings with me. And then came the opportunity I'd been waiting for. The board was preparing to announce a major promotion, the very one Alex had dangled in front of me for months. Whispers said it was between me and Daniel, another senior associate. Alex assured me with that same confident grin, "Don't worry, it's already in the bag for you." But I no longer trusted his words, so I made my own move. Quietly, I arranged a private meeting with one of the board directors. I presented a portfolio of my work, campaigns I had led, revenue figures I had influenced, strategies that had succeeded because of me, not him. Every piece of evidence carefully documented. The director listened, flipping through the files, his expression unreadable. When he finally looked up, he said, "You've been doing impressive work, Victoria. Why hasn't this been presented to us before?" I smiled, though my heart was racing. Because sometimes great work gets overshadowed. But I'm done letting that happen. That night, lying in bed, I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in weeks. Power. Not the kind Alex pretended to give me, the kind I created for myself. The revenge wasn't just about exposing him. It was about reclaiming me, my voice, my worth, my future. And I wasn't done yet, because soon, Alex would learn the hardest lesson of all. Never mistake a woman's silence for weakness. The day of the board meeting felt electric. The entire office buzzed with anticipation. Everyone knew a big announcement was coming, though no one was certain whose name would be called. For months, the whispers had been constant. Daniel had the numbers, I had the creativity, and Alex, well, he had his charm. But what no one knew was that today I had something far stronger, the truth. I walked into the conference room with steady steps, my portfolio clutched tightly in my hands. Alex was already there, smiling that self-satisfied smile of his, shaking hands with board members as if the promotion was a foregone conclusion. When his eyes met mine, he gave me a wink. A wink that once made me feel special, but now only made me sick. To him, this was another game, another stage for his performance. The meeting began. Presentations were made, numbers discussed, future strategies debated. Finally, it was time for recommendations. Alex stood, delivering his speech with practiced ease, confident, polished, rehearsed to perfection. He highlighted our achievements, though anyone listening would think they were all his. I sat there, my jaw tight, waiting. When he finished, polite applause followed. He sat down beside me, leaning close enough to whisper, "Told you, this is already yours." But I didn't smile back. When the chairman invited additional input, I rose to my feet. My voice was calm but firm. "I'd like to share some insights as well." All eyes turned to me. For a brief moment, I saw irritation flash across Alex's face. He hadn't expected this. I walked to the front, laying out my portfolio on the table. Over the last year, I've had the privilege of leading several major campaigns. Here are the documented strategies, the performance data, and the outcomes. You'll notice the consistent thread of my involvement, from initial concept to final execution. The directors leaned forward, flipping through the materials. Pages of emails, drafts, revenue growth charts, all with my fingerprints on them. My heart raced, but my voice never wavered. "I want to be clear," I continued. "These results were a team effort. But I also want to ensure that the work I've done isn't lost in the shadows. For too long, I allowed someone else to be the face of my ideas. That ends today." Silence followed. Heavy, weighted silence. And then a question from one director. "So you're saying these initiatives were your leadership, not Mr. Alex's?" I glanced at him. His jaw was tight, his confident mask slipping just slightly. "Yes," I said, holding his gaze. "They were mine." The room erupted into murmurs. Some board members exchanged glances, others scribbled notes. Alex shifted in his seat, his face stiff with forced composure. After the meeting adjourned, I walked out with my head high. The whispers trailed behind me. But this time, they weren't about scandal. They were about recognition. Later that evening, I got the call. "Victoria," the chairman's voice said, "congratulations. The board has decided to promote you to senior strategy lead. Your work speaks for itself." I thanked him, my voice steady, though inside I wanted to cry with relief. When I returned to the office to pack my things for the night, Alex was waiting. His face was a storm. Anger, disbelief, betrayal. "You think you've won, don't you?" he spat. I met his glare with calm eyes. "No, Alex, I didn't win. I just stopped letting you use me as your cover." He stepped closer, his voice low, venomous. "You'll regret this." I smiled faintly. "No, the only thing I regret is ever believing in you." For the first time, he had no words, and that silence was my victory. The morning after the board's decision, I woke up to sunlight streaming through my curtains. For the first time in months, it didn't feel harsh or mocking. It felt warm, healing, like the universe itself was telling me, "You made it through." I made myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and let the quiet seep into me. No buzzing phone full of Alex's empty promises. No knot in my stomach wondering where I stood. Just silence. Sweet, liberating silence. At the office, everything felt different. Colleagues who once looked at me with suspicion or whispered behind my back now greeted me with genuine respect. "Congratulations, Victoria," they said. Some even added, "It's well-deserved." And you know what? For the first time, I believed them. Alex, on the other hand, was a shadow of his former self. The man who once strutted around the office with effortless charm now moved with a stiffness. His smile brittle, his confidence cracked. He avoided my gaze in meetings, his voice no longer carrying the same weight. Power, I realized, wasn't just about titles. It was about truth, and the truth had finally stripped him bare. But this wasn't just about revenge anymore. Revenge had been the fuel that kept me moving when I felt like collapsing. Now, I didn't need it. I had something greater, freedom. I no longer felt tied to his approval or trapped by his lies. I was carving my own path, one decision at a time. Weeks later, I was standing at the front of a packed conference room, presenting our company's new strategy to investors. My voice was steady, my vision clear, my ideas applauded. When I looked out at the sea of faces, I didn't see Alex's shadow anywhere. And in that moment, I realized the most important lesson of all. I had never needed him. He had needed me. The affair, the manipulation, the betrayal, they were chapters of my story, but not the ending. The ending was me, stronger, wiser, and unapologetically myself. That night, I treated myself to dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights, alone but not lonely. I raised a glass to the skyline and whispered to myself, "Here's to new beginnings." For so long, I had thought my worth came from being chosen, by a man, by a boss, by someone in power. But now I knew the truth. My worth came from choosing myself. And as I watched the city glow beneath me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The storm was over, and I was finally free. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.